Labour Party has replaced its assassinated Enugu East senatorial candidate Oyibo Chukwu with his younger brother Kelvin Chukwu. The party nominated Kelvin Chukwu, the youngest brother of the assassinated party candidate in the Enugu East senatorial election, rescheduled for the Saturday election. The Enugu East senatorial election was rescheduled for March 11 following the murder of Oyibo Chukwu, a former Nigerian Bar Association chairman in Enugu State, on Wednesday, February 22, 3 days to the presidential and the National Assembly elections. The younger Chukwu was elected the Labour Party's standard bearer a few minutes ago by winning a whole 223 out of the 231 votes cast at Top 10 Hotel in Gulf State, Enugu.
So that's more like a breaking news just coming in. Yeah. Of course, the Labour Party, unfortunately, they lost their candidate who was actually shot and burnt alongside some other people.
So sad.
Well, let's bring in Dr. Sam Amadi, a Rice News analyst, to really take a look at, of course, especially INEC and its performance and the admittance just yesterday. Dr. Amadi, thank you so much for being here. Okay, so looking at the issues now, they've talked about security and even conduct of its staff, logistics, and of course not uploading on IREF. But the big elephant in the room that people are still concerned about, the electronic transmission of those results from the polling units to the IREF portal, which besides INEC, making that promises itself, the law has its own stance with regards to that. Talk to us about all of this as we look forward to the governorship elections. Are you concerned in any way, or are you confident that, they will power through and do better?
I think they have the capacity to do better. I mean, learning from avoidable mistakes they made, except if they surrender to the governors. Look, the stakes will be higher in the governorship elections because the governors are going to be fighting closer to bone. They cost closer to the bone. Governors would like to win in the national election, but also want to win either those who are doing for second term, those who are bringing in their associates. So I think the problem is that, yes, we may talk in terms of INEC doing better, but INEC needs to be more forceful. INEC needs to be really independent of the governors now to really do a good job. But again, we need to rectify where INEC got it wrong. I have rectified four administrative errors that INEC made.
4 administrative errors?
Yes, okay. Administrative procedure error. First, INEC doesn't recognize itself as a regulator. So it sees itself as a transaction officer. Print ballot box, deliver them. But as a regulator, you're looking at procedural and substantive fairness. All actions have to be fair. If you look at during the primary, INEC, a night of PDP's primary, INEC extended 2 weeks. PDP was, other parties extended, say no. But that day of election, that falls below regulatory fairness. The second error is that INEC, especially with regards to the beavers, okay, the electronic transmission, clearly, clause 18 makes it very clear. And I have it here on phone. It simply says the INEC must transmit or transfer the election results to its IRF portal. Now, the only arguments people are offering is that transmit. It says INEC must electronically transmit or transfer. They're not saying transfer is by hand. It's just equivalent of saying you must move this book by hand or move or shift this book by hand. Somebody said because you have said use hand to move or shift. The shift requires leg. I mean, that is grammatically nonsensical. It says electronically transmit or transfer. So the two verbs are used in alternative as a sense in drafting to cover, transfer, transmit. For example, you say somebody can bequest, gift, or transfer ownership. They are the same thing, using multiple words to cover multiple meanings. So
but that some would say that created a loophole.
No, it created a loophole because even that's why the INEC chairman understood it well. In his Chatham House, he said, we are going to real time in the memo written by the... So everything INEC has communicated has shown clarity. This is an afterthought, but let's move forward for that. The third error, administrative error INEC created, was INEC when the parties said, look, we contest elections, when Dino and others, INEC said, we'll finish collation, we'll deal with it. As a regulator, this is what you do. INEC would have developed rules for filing petition. So once you complain, INEC said, put your petition formally. So when they finish the collation, gather all this, they will now hold a session with all these guys, look at their issues and say, we dismiss them. So rigor, regulators must have procedural fairness and substantive fairness, meaning that there's a hearing, and I keep telling INEC long ago, you are an adjudicator. Once an election collection is a quasi-judicial function, you're acting like a court, you give hearing. Mr. A says, Mr. Chairman, this result from Lagos is contested, is bad, blah, blah, blah. Put your petition, you put it before INEC. INEC hears you and says, no, you are wrong. If you look at the Electoral Act and the regulation, it talks about how the polling officers will make a call. When somebody contests the result, they will compare with the BVAS report, compare with XYZ. Those are decisions you make on record. So going forward, INEC should require its officers from the polling unit to the local government to make records of determinations they make with regards to cancelling results. If you hear at the proceeding, INEC will ask, was any result cancelled? Those decisions, yes, 500. Why? There should be a memorandum. These results were cancelled because I reasoned that they were overvoting, they were this, or there was riot.
Okay, interesting.
So as a regulator, INEC failure is to provide what we call in administrative law, which I teach, is decision on record. So you capture the memorandum that tells this is we applied our mind to the complaint and we decided against it. This is a record. So when you go to the High Court, they will help you say, okay, oh, INEC did the right. Now the fourth error INEC made, before the election, there was an issue around what is 25% of 2/3 of the federation. Some people said it includes, you must win Abuja, you must get Abuja 25. INEC, as a regulator, what you do is, we call it interpretive rule. That means you look at the act, when there's no clarity, the law didn't say INEC define, you introduce, this is how INEC will interpret this rule. So all the parties know that if this happens, INEC will apply this rule. So INEC kept playing dead brain. All the debate, people say, oh, 25 means you must win Abuja. People say, oh, it means you don't have to have 25 in Abuja. All that, INEC did not explain how it reads the rule.
Okay, in a way, you're saying that INEC did not have properly engaged the people before the elections.
That when you're a regulator and the act you are working from is contested, the first rule is that the regulator defines how we interpret it. The courts defer to, and that's what the US Supreme Court said in Chevron case, says we defer to the regulator's interpretive rule because if they are reasonable, we accept it. But what we must first do is to define, say, this is how INEC will consider. Because the law says before you declare a winner, he must certify this condition. People are disputing, what does this condition require? Clarity demand from INEC as a regulator to say, this is how we will define this. So that at the night of the voting collation, all of us know that you don't need to get 25 in Abuja, or you need to get it.
Okay, to avoid unnecessary
so these four administrative errors, if INEC corrects them, and all boil down to behaving like a regulator, having rigor, it's just a regulator is like a court.
All right. Do you honestly believe that INEC has been unaware of these functions or authority it possesses, or there could be, or did you suspect a puppet master trying to handicap INEC in some way?
It's both. I think more likely the first. Look, if you look at the history of INEC, I've said before, we are coming late to regulatory, what I call administrative law state, meaning where institutions play more regulatory role. For example, we are struggling with monetary policy. We didn't have that before. NEC came in over about not up to 2025, a regulator of electricity. We didn't have regulators before. Ministry do things. So the way INEC has considered themselves from FEDECO, from FEC, is transaction. There's a vote there's election. You make sure the ballot box arrives on time, you print the ballot paper, you count the votes, you go away. But their job is actually regulatory. And I give you several instances. For example, if somebody complains that vote didn't happen in their place, or violence, they came and knocked them and they didn't vote. Will I just say, okay, fine, elections no, look at it. You know that up until when Biden was sworn in, some district in the US, we are still didn't recount because their rules are specified. If there is this number less than this, it will recount. They are still didn't audit. And the numbers keep shifting. You see, okay, after this, they have audited it because they laid the rules. Everybody knows what rules to trigger. once the elections, you don't like it, you straight go and file that day. If you look at what happened in Florida, everywhere there's crisis, even if in Philadelphia, what happens is that the parties already know that there are filings you can do to challenge the recount. And they'll meet the board, the council board will meet and decide. They say, no, we'll go ahead. They will decide, they give you 2 hours, 3 hours deliberation, and your lawyers will come and address them. So they'll make a decision rigorously, fair hearing, not the one that maybe Dino will shout. Fair hearing is the word, because every INEC collecting result is acting in a quasi-judicial manner. And Section 36 of the Constitution, which is fair hearing, triggers. You don't have to do fair hearing like court, call witnesses. You just ask, okay, file this petition, your challenge. P2B, you say, Labour Party, you said you won this area, this was cancelled. Okay, bring it. They sit there. And that's what
all of this should have been done before a winner.
Before you certify. Because when you are certified, it's a judicial process that this is okay. What evidence, what hearing did you take when people complain? You hear them, you say, in spite of this, we are convinced that this meets substantial.
Then if you're not okay with it, then you head to the court.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Sam Amadi, as we get ready to wrap up the conversation, one interesting part and what people are really concerned about is INEC talking about some of its staff that erred, you know, when it came to their role in the elections, be it ad hoc staff or even main INEC staff. It's saying that they will not be a part of the forthcoming gubernatorial polls. And people are questioning.
More than that.
They said logistics, first of all. They said you already have an issue with logistics. How can you cope with these people not being a part of it? And also, beyond not being a part of it, what other measures are you putting in place to serve as a deterrent for other INEC staff to ensure that they do the right thing?
The Electoral Act provides for penal for 6 months, 500,000 for even polling officers who fail. The problem with INEC and problem with Nigeria, the photo of victory, assuming the courts now confirm the president-elect as president, jubilation, we forget all the atrocities of INEC. Nobody sits back to audit. First of all, are we supposed to spend 306 billion? Look at the escalator. From, in the last 2 elections, 100 something billion, 200 something billion, now it's 300 something. If we continue this way, next election, we're going to be spending about 500 billion. To do what we can spend maybe less than 50 billion. So the point is this, beyond the logistic constraint, there need to be proper audit, criminal investigation. And this is what the law requires. The Nigerian police should by now set up structure to investigate. Look at the results we're seeing now. INEC has started shifting, changing some of the results, for example, in the IRF. The question is, if somebody pronounced a fake result, that's a crime under the Electoral Act. Why shouldn't the police by now detailing some of the persons they are questioning for a crime? Look, INEC may not have a perfect structure and process, but the most important thing is lack of impunity. That if there are mistakes that are grievous, and I agree with Mahmoud that maybe some people play their role badly, who are these people? Beyond excluding them, how about prosecution? And again, it's covered that this crisis because governors control these processes, either they corrupt, and INEC knows that the role of governors, more than the president in our election, historically, has been terrible. And so we should be thinking about how do we insulate the wrecks in those states. And by the way, again, I don't blame anybody. We've packed that commission with persons who were appointed chief of staff to Umahi. How can a chief of staff of a governor be National Assembly confirmed to a role that calls for independence? How can you do that kind of blunder? How can you allow a chief of staff who play dead brain and allow his master, who spent billions probably to get him nominated? So after this election, we have to go back to ways and scrap this INEC mode of appointment. And make sure that politicians don't appoint them. Because what the governors have done, long game to play, they will start now planting the nest. Most of these commissioners are exiting. They have already started packing the board with not just people who are not credible, with political appointees who have served as chief of staff, who have served as commissioners to these people. So this merry-go-round is very expensive shit we are playing ourselves. We need to now have INEC the way always recommended. Yaradua got elected, just like this. But the honest man, he said this election is really blunder. The Supreme Court almost threw away at Yaradua. It was 4-5, I think. It was just one person.
It wasn't a unanimous
It was even
decision.
a swap. people allege that the last person changed would have been. So the man, as an honest man, says, this election I got is terrible. We have to reform. Unfortunately, when Jonathan came in, he didn't quite enact all the reforms.
So we should look at reforming INEC.
And reforming INEC to have regulatory clarity so that everybody knows, if I don't have this result, I'll go and file. This is a prescribed form to file. And INEC will not just come in one night after calculating the announced winner. Even Yakubu promised that he's going to, after all this, listen to that. He should have had a formal meeting with his commissioners. And that's why if you watch, all the commissioners sat on that table. What that means that it's like a commission meeting. It's a formal hearing of the commission. And therefore, they should have had that procedure. And I think if they do that, they'll be able to cure some of these problems that we have.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sam Amadi, for coming on the show tonight.